My Secret Personality. Web novel. Chapter 6. Claire's statement made the entire Wilson family stunned. Everyone felt that Claire must be crazy. Don't divide the time to show off. At this moment of being in the limelight, what can be the result besides death? The Emigrant Group is the largest company in Oris Hill. How can people look at the Wilson family? Whoever talks about it will never succeed. Harold couldn't help but sarcastically said, "Claire, do you think you can get the contract from the Emigrant Group?" Harold's own sister and Claire's cousin, Wendy, also sneered at this moment. "Sister Claire, what is your identity? And what is the identity of the Emigrant Group? You go to talk so rashly. Don't shame our Wilson family." Someone agreed, "That is, if she is driven out by the Emigrant Group by then. Our Wilson family will definitely become a laughing stock in Oris Hill." When Claire heard the sound, her cheeks were extremely red, feeling very embarrassed. Since marrying Charlie, her status in the family has plummeted, becoming less and less important, and almost squeezed out. And even her parents have been ridiculed. She felt that if she could talk about this project with the Emigrant Group, her position in the family would definitely be consolidated. The most important thing is that parents can also stand upright. But at this moment, being ridiculed by so many people, she couldn't help but retreat. She gave Charlie a depressed look. Why did she listen to his bewitching words? Won't get up for this if she knew it. Old Mrs. Wilson was very angry when she heard what everyone said. After asking this question several times, no one dared to take this task. Now Claire took the initiative to stand up. And the group of people began to pour cold water again. Although the old Mrs. Wilson had always disliked Claire, at this time, she felt that Claire was at least willing to share her worries. Unlike other people who only knew to hide in their shells at this moment. Especially Harold, her beloved grandson, really disappointed her too much. Because of this, Mrs. Wilson's attitude towards Claire also changed a lot. So she immediately said, "Since others dare not agree, don't talk nonsense. This time we cooperate with Emigrant Group on the project. Let Claire talk about it." Claire could only bite the bullet and replied, "Don't worry, Grandma. I will definitely go all out." At this time, Harold sneered coldly from his nose and said, "What's the use of going all out? It's not a shame for the family to fail in the end." Charlie asked with a sneer, "Harold, what is your purpose in singing badly? Don't you think the Wilson family is qualified to cooperate with Emigrant Group?" Harold didn't expect that Charlie would dare to speak at the family meeting. And he would wear a high hat on himself. Seeing that Mrs. Wilson's expression was also a little sulky, he immediately explained, "I don't mean that. I just think it is impossible for Claire to discuss this cooperation." Charlie smiled and asked him, "Then what if she can talk about cooperation at first? Shall we make a bet?" Harold sneered, "Come on, just gamble, I will be afraid of you. Tell me, what are you betting on?" Charlie said, "If she start to negotiate a contract, you kneel down and knock me 3 heads in front of the whole family and say you are wrong. If she can't negotiate at first, I will knock 3 heads for you and say aloud that I was wrong. What do you think?" "Ha ha ha ha." Harold immediately laughed wildly. "You rubbish are really looking for death. Okay, I'll bet with you." Charlie nodded in satisfaction and said, "The whole family is here to witness that if anyone goes back, it will be equivalent to wishing death for father, mother, grandpa, and grandma." Charlie deliberately said the 3 words "dead grandma" very seriously, because he was afraid that Harold would back out it when he loses. As soon as these words came out, Harold never dared to go back. Because in that way, wouldn't it be cursing his grandma? That is, old Mrs. Wilson to die? When the time comes, Mrs. Wilson will not let him go. Okay. Harold didn't know that Charlie had dug a hole for him, but instead felt that it was impossible for him to lose. So, he laughed and said, "The whole family witnesses. I am waiting for you to kowtow to me." Claire was startled, and kept winking at him. But she didn't expect him to completely ignore it. Old Mrs. Wilson didn't care about this kind of gambling. Her only concern was whether she could enter the emigrant group's cooperation list this time. If she could, don't say let Harold kneel to Charlie. Even if Harold called Charlie his father, she didn't care either. So she said, "Today's meeting ends here. Claire, you have 3 days to win the contract and the meeting ends." Back home, the father-in-law and mother-in-law immediately attacked Charlie and Claire. The mother-in-law Elaine was anxiously worried, and blurted out, "Claire, you are crazy, how can you listen to Charlie's rubbish words? So confused and promised this job." Father-in-law Jacob Wilson also scolded Charlie and said, Charlie, you rubbish, you have killed my girl." Then, his father-in-law said angrily, "If you can't talk about the emigrant group's cooperation in the first place, you will definitely be squeezed out by the family. You, this rubbish, will also kneel and kowtow to Harold in front of the whole family. Don't let you lose it." Charlie said seriously, "Dad and Mom, as long as the contract can be negotiated at first, everything will be solved. Talk all bullshit." The father-in-law scolded, "Do you know how strong the emigrant group is? How can they look at the Wilson family?" Charlie smiled and said, "Maybe people can see it. I think it must be fine at first, and she can definitely get the contract down." The mother-in-law sneered at the side, "Do you think? Think you are the boss of the emigrant group? A rubbish, do you use any a brain of yours? You are still talking here." End of chapter 6.